Good evening. My name's Chris McCreary and I'm the founder and director of the Northern Ireland Science Festival, and you're all very welcome to this year's digital edition of the programme. We're delighted this evening to present what part of our One Planet series, where we bring together the world's leading scientists, thinkers, decision makers and activists to discuss what we all can do to combat climate change and create a planet in balance. We'd like to say a special thanks for this event to the British Council Northern Ireland for the continued support of not just the festival, but for this very, very special event tonight. So if you enjoy, please make sure to like, subscribe to our channel and follow us for more at nisciencefestival.com. Thank you.
Hello everyone and welcome to How to Save the Planet. I'm your host, Lizzie Daly, thrilled to be walking you through today's event, which has been put on by the Northern Ireland Science Festival in partnership with the British Council of Northern Ireland. And today we are talking about, well, the clue is in the title, How to Save the Planet. And we're doing so with an inspiring panel of female conservationists and those dealing with the issues that our planet is facing most. And I'll introduce them very, very shortly. But first, the Northern Ireland Science Festival is the largest of its kind. It's the second largest in Europe. And they've put together, in honour of this year, the year where the United Nations Climate Change Conference, you may also know as COP26, is taking place in November in Glasgow. So it's in honour of that. And really, we're going to be discussing today the issues that the planet is facing and the ways that we can influence policymakers and the public to make change. So very exciting. So who do we have with us? Well, first of all, we're delighted to welcome the legendary ethologist and conservationist Dr. Jane Goodall, DBE, founder of Jane Goodall Institute and UN Messenger of Peace. Through nearly 60 years of groundbreaking work, Jane has shown us that not only do we need to take action for chimpanzee conservation, but actually she's shown us how you can redefine species conservation and to include people and the environment in action for change. We also have with us the fantastic Dr. Tara Shine, who's an environmental scientist and who advises world leaders on climate change and climate justice. She's also the director of Change by Degrees, which helps people and communities and businesses to work and live more sustainably. Also, April last year, her book came out, which is called How to Save Your Planet One Object at a Time. So very excited to have her on here. Of course, it was critical acclaim. So looking forward to hearing more about that. And last but not least, we have the wonderful Anna Kernahan, who is an 18-year-old climate activist. She's also the founder of Fridays for Future in Belfast, and she is one of two weekly climate strikers outside of Belfast City Hall. She uses her voice, she uses her writing and her activism to inspire others about climate justice, the environment, and mental health. So I'm sure you'll all agree, a wonderful panel of women here. Hello to you all. I'd love to start by, I guess, seeing what you're up to and what you've been working on most recently. If it's okay, Dr. Jane Goodall, I'll come to you first. Hello, wherever you are, and tell us what you've been working on most recently. Busy, I'm sure.
Well, more busy than I've ever been in my life. And I've got 3 minutes, right? Or 2 minutes? How many minutes?
You've got 2 minutes.
3. So I thought what I'd do with my 3 minutes, other than talk about what I've been doing, let me just give a very general outline of the problem, what we have to do to save. We're here to save the planet, right? So first of all, what do we have to save it from? And so I thought I'd just run through the gamut of the problems that we're facing, because they're huge. And right now we're in the middle of this pandemic, and this has caused immense suffering and loss of life and loss of jobs and economic chaos. And the tragedy is we brought it on ourselves by our absolute disrespect of the natural world and animals. And we face an even greater threat to our future, and that is climate change and biodiversity loss. They too have come about through this disrespect of the natural world. And that's one of the most important things. And this pandemic has really caused many people to think we must somehow create a different relationship with the natural world and a new, more sustainable, greener economy. So that's kind of underlying everything. But then the main drivers of all of this, well, first of all, the crazy idea that there can be unlimited economic development on a planet with finite natural resources and a growing human population. And already in some areas, the resources are used up faster than Mother Nature can replenish them because of this, it's kind of worship of money. And success is making money and getting power. And that's another thing we have to change. We have to think of a successful life as being one that gives you enough, helps you to share, and not continue on this mad desire for growth, more and more money, more and more power. And that's another thing we have to try and cope with. And then, of course, there's our reckless burning of fossil fuel and the creation of other greenhouse gases like methane. Poverty. And if you're really poor, you destroy the land because you're desperate to get more land to grow food or to make money out of selling the natural resources you have, because you have to in order to live. And so that's something really important. And then perhaps one of the worst drivers of this disaster that we face is industrial agriculture, whether it's agriculture of crops. We're poisoning the land. The land eventually will lose its fertility forever. We're destroying the organisms that make the soil healthy. And we're spraying poison onto our fields, onto our food. We're destroying the environment for huge areas which we cultivate with monocultures. And enough said on that, but the animal agriculture, billions and billions of animals in intensive farms simply in order to get cheap meat. And this has encouraged the growth of meat eating around the world. Poor nations rise out of poverty, want to eat more meat, causing huge areas to be destroyed, to grow grain, to feed them, fossil fuel to get the grain to the animals to slaughter, meat to table. And they're all producing methane gas, which is one of the very virulent greenhouse gases. And also it's incredibly cruel and provides wonderful conditions for pathogens like this virus to jump from an animal to a person, and it may create a new zoonotic disease like coronavirus. And so we also waste a lot of water changing vegetable to animal protein in some parts of the world. That's a terrible, terrible thing. And then there's our unsustainable lifestyles. I mean, we have so much more than we need. We buy this cheap food, we waste it, we buy cheap clothes, we throw them away. We're not thinking anymore. And we've got to change that too. And then we can't forget that now the population is about 7.8 billion. And as I've said already, natural resources are being used up faster than nature can replenish them. And they're saying that it'll be closer to 10 billion of us in 2050. So what's going to happen? It's just facts that we have to look at. At the same time as human populations are growing, our livestock is growing too. And, and then we've got to tackle ignorance. There's an awful lot that goes on because people aren't educated. Children don't get environmental education in many schools around the world. Things are very often done for ignorance, not always. Sometimes it's deliberate. But ignorance is huge. I mean, and it's really true. People don't believe it. But as you know, I used to travel around the world for 300 days a year. Now, in China, there are actually people who truly believe that elephants shed their tusks every year. Now, they've banned ivory now, but that's what they believe. So people say, oh, they couldn't. But think, a stag sheds his antlers. And if you don't know anything about anatomy, and you've never seen an elephant and you're not taught anything, why wouldn't an elephant shed its tusks any more than a deer would shed his antlers or a stag? And so those are the kind of problems that we have to fight, and also social justice, gender equality, and all this sort of thing. And, unequitable wages and all that side of it. So what do we have to do? We have to come up with moving on to clean energy, clean green energy. We need to move to environmentally friendly farming methods, eliminate factory farming and eliminate this monoculture and this what they call conventional agriculture. I think of conventional as what I've seen in Tanzania with farmers out in the fields like they used to be, but no, we call it, that isn't conventional anymore. Then we must alleviate poverty. That's absolutely underlying everything. And what can we do as individuals? We can make wise choices. We can become vegetarian or vegan. This January, the January for veganism had more people than ever before. It's growing really fast in China. Mm-hmm. And the Chinese government actually committed in 2016 that by 2030 it would halve meat eating in China. That's huge. And they have banned the eating of wild animals. And then, as I've said, we need a new relationship with the natural world and animals. We need to encourage governments and business to buy into this new outlook, this new mindset. And then what's the hope? Well, my hope is in the youth of today. Young people, you know that I have this program, Roots and Shoots, for young people from kindergarten, university, beyond university. It's now in 86 countries and growing fast. And it's young people choosing to do projects to help people, animals, and the environment. And also the resilience of nature, give nature a chance. We can destroy a whole place, give it time, give it some help. And once again, nature can take over and biodiversity can thrive again. So that I thought I would just outline what the problems are and the kind of things we can do. And that's not everything, but it's enough.
It's already a lot and a powerful way to start this conversation. I'm sure you'll all agree. So thank you for that, Jane. Lots to think about already. I'll go to you, Anna, there in studio. Hello, lovely to meet you. Love to hear more about what you've been working on most recently. You've dedicated your life as a climate activist to, inspire others, connect with others about some of these important issues around the climate crisis. So tell me what you've been working on most recently.
Well, most recently, I've been working with Fridays for Future and School Striking for the Climate every week with my friend Caitlin. And we do this outside Belfast City Hall. And we do that to put pressure on NI Assembly. And we have some broad demands as Fridays for Future International, which are to listen to the science and act on the science, and to stay at or below 1.5 degrees of warming above pre-industrial levels, and to stay in line with the Paris Agreement. And more specifically here in Northern Ireland, it's been almost a year since Northern Ireland Assembly declared a climate emergency, but in that time, they have done nothing to act as though they are in a climate emergency. And so we're pushing pressure to let them know that we're still here, we haven't gone away since they declared that, and to ensure that they put in place things such as a Climate Act for Northern Ireland. And we're doing this by striking weekly to keep up a presence, to raise awareness of the climate crisis. That's what we've been doing.
Well, I think your work is brilliant. And as Jane said, it's young people like you who are leading the way for the future of our planet. So fantastic. Tara, lovely to see you again. You are very busy as well, I'm sure, with your book coming out last year and this year being COP26. So what's been on the agenda for you recently?
Thanks, Lizzie. Hi, everyone. What's on the agenda? Being a terrible homeschool parent. Awful. I'm not apparently good at that. I think I could be good at teaching, but not my own children. So that's been one thing. And then really, really busy with my work. So a bit like Jane, run off my feet. So I've been working with my company, Change by Degrees, to help businesses to do more to play their part on climate, to engage their employees. So this isn't kind of just a top-down commitment by a business written on a piece of paper, but something that's lived and breathed by every member of their staff. I'm still loving the work I'm doing. I'm trying to better communicate sustainability and climate change so that it's not just about being green, and it's not just for people who identify as being green, but this is something for everybody that's attractive to everybody. So lots of thinking about how we inspire people so we really grow what's still too small a movement and merge it with other movements around social justice, gender equality, diversity and inclusiveness, race and racism, so that we get more people working for the better society that we all want to live in. So a big thing I do is try and make sure we never separate the environment, the economic and the social, but really tie all that together. Yeah, and I'm working on fun projects in Tanzania. I'm working with the United Nations Framework Convention on climate change as part of a science policy dialogue that's going on there. So yeah, no shortage of things, but always I hope bringing a very honest reflection of the grimness of the science and the stark realities of the facts of the risks we're taking with every point of every degree that we warm our global planet up. But also hope, because I do want a much better future for all of us. And I heard Anna speaking on a video, Anna, and you were saying, yeah, by 2050, I'll be 48. And I was thinking, oh, I am 48 already. But I feel like I have a lot more work to do on this. So my message to Anna and her peers is there are lots of us who have been working on this for years. And although some of the work we've done has been a little bit invisible or policy wonky or stuck in the scientific journals, it is there to build on. And I firmly believe we have a lot of the solutions. We just need to scale them up now. And so we're not going to leave it all to your generation. I promise you that. That's what gets me out of bed every day.
Yeah,
I love that so much. Yeah, I love that. And it's that kind of intergenerational movement to hopefully push things in a positive direction. Nevertheless, I want to talk about kind of each of your experiences, because you all bring so much to this panel. And, the past 20 years have been the warmest on record. Over the past 22 years, we've had the 20 warmest years. Things like, you hear titles and facts like that, which just shock you to the core. Maybe if we could start with you first, Jane. When was the first time you became really aware of the planetary crisis and you felt like you needed to do something about it?
Well, I'm not sure that I can tell you when I first became aware of it, because it came so gradually. But I think, I'll never forget the one year, and it was about 15 years ago, something like that. And I was in Greenland standing with Inuit elders by that great ice cliff that goes up to the ice cap. And it was late winter, and already the ice was melting, water was pouring out, icebergs were calving. And the Inuit elders were saying this never used to melt, even in the height of summer. And I went straight from there by chance to Panama and met indigenous people who'd had to leave their island homes because at high tide, they were not safe anymore in case a storm blew up. And so they were being gradually moved onto the mainland. And, I've seen the terrible weather pattern changes, the results of the more frequent, really bad hurricanes and typhoons, the terrible flooding, the awful fires that have been raging. First time on record, I heard about fires in the Arctic Circle. And this all came very gradually, but it was all kind of first-hand experience. And I think that's been very useful for me because, my goal is spreading awareness. And I think if you've actually seen things, if you've had some kind of experience of them, then you can put a message over much more powerfully.
Absolutely. Yeah, very well said. Anna, when was the first time you felt like you really needed to do something for this planet?
Well, I heard about the climate crisis in school, in primary school. I always knew it was a thing, but we were taught it as though it was a problem for future generations, and that us switching off the lights and switching the water off as we brushed our teeth would solve it, basically. And it wasn't until I read the IPCC 1.5 degree special report that I realised that it wasn't actually a future generation problem. The generation had already come, and it was our generation. So that made me look into it more. And then reading things about how it affects here locally in Belfast and Northern Ireland, like 1 in 24 people in Belfast die from air pollution every year. Things like that really got me wanting to do something.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tara, I'm sure throughout your career, you spent a lot of time in important meetings, but as well, I'm sure you spent time in the field seeing some of these disasters happening in front of your very own eyes. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I was just thinking, for me, I guess I had the realization around that I really cared about this and wanted to do something probably when I was a bit younger even than Anna. And the motivation there was sort of cruelty to animals really was the motivator for me. And at the time, there were huge whale slaughters going on in the 80s that were being reported on. And I really cared about the plight of animals around the world. But then, as I went on I worked for 3 years, for example, in a country called Mauritania in Africa. And I came to realize that what mattered to me was the whole picture, how the people and the environment and the wildlife all interacted together, and that I couldn't save the animals that I loved if I didn't save the people, and I couldn't find a viable future for the people I cared for if we didn't look after the environment. And that, I guess, I've been lucky enough to work in some amazing parts of the world, from the deserts of Mauritania to the deserts of Mongolia, throughout East and Southern Africa, and every day in every way I saw the impacts of a changing environment. Interestingly, when I started studying environmental science, there was still very much the is there or isn't there climate change. So I really followed that science all the way through, and I couldn't agree more with Anna that you cannot read the IPCC's 1.5 degree report and not be struck at the immediacy of the impacts, the fact that climate change is overwhelmingly here already right now, and what a short time we have left to really turn things around before we lose things that we love. I love scuba diving. It's one of my favorite things to do in the whole world. Here in Ireland or anywhere where the water is warmer is even a bonus. But to think that my children might never see a coral reef breaks my heart. Yet, at 1.5 degrees of warming, we lose 70 to 90% of our coral reefs. If we let warming increase to 2 degrees, we lose 99% of our coral reefs. And that's hard for me because I'd like my children to see a coral reef, but it's much harder if you live and have your livelihood dependent on that coral reef system for fishing, for tourism, whatever it might be. So, wherever we look in the world and stop and take notice of the natural world, we'll see those impacts of climate change now. But they're not just on the planet, they're also on the people, on every single one of us that relies on our planet for food, for water, for shelter. We're deeply connected to it.
Absolutely. And, that urgency is so needed across the board, and it's so integrated into every single person on this planet's lives and our environments and habitats. And I think a big worry is the time when those effects become irreversible. However, despite that, the timeline of how things have gone and how things have been, especially over the past year or so now with the pandemic, let's mix it up. Tara, if we'll come back to you, do you think, are you worried that people perhaps have kind of gone off the ball when it comes to looking at the environmental problems because of the pandemic?
I was really afraid of that, Lizzie, at the beginning, I have to say. And I kind of wondered about my future career, I have to tell you, or the future of my business. I thought, well, nobody's going to care about this anymore. We're goosed. But it's been quite the opposite. I think the fact that in these different lockdowns, we may not, some of us are crazy busy, but we've paused in some way in life. We're not moving outside of our locality. So at the moment, I can't go beyond 5 kilometers from my home. I really need to do that on my feet. I've explored my local area and been more connected to it than ever before. I think people have come to realize how much they value their balcony, their garden, the green trees they can see on their walk, the birds that feed in their garden, whatever it might be. So I think we've come to recognize that a bit more. And I hope as well that our response to COVID shows us how you respond to an emergency. So A, you respond fast, and B, you respond with an equal focus on government leadership, regulation and direction, and individual action and responsibility. So it gets us out of this, which is more important, government action or personal action. It's both. And obviously businesses of all sizes have to play their part as well. So I think I'm a little bit hopeful about that, but I worry about us as human beings because we tend to forget quite quickly. So how do we kind of hold on to some of these reconnections we've had to nature so that they're not gone in 2022, but they're still really important to the way we live our life?
Really important points there. And have you found over the past few years, through your work and your activism, you're finding more young people inspired and connected with some of these issues?
Yes, I think that being able to go online has made us a lot more connected internationally. In the Global Day of Action in September of 2020, we had people doing actions on every continent, including Antarctica. We were literally pole to pole. And I think that really shows that although we can't take to the streets, we can still make a really, really big difference. And coronavirus has also shown that if governments want to treat a crisis like a crisis, they can do that. And they have shown that it is possible to react quickly for coronavirus. And so they have the capacity to do exactly the same for the climate crisis, which is quite hopeful, but we just need to make sure they actually do it.
Yes, an important part of that. And Jane, you were talking about how this has been one of your busiest years. You're busy as it is anyway, but what has been your experience with that, and have you felt people's attitudes changing at all?
Well, you know, there's all these problems when it comes to changing mindsets, and it really depends on the different countries. I mean, in Tanzania, the president has announced coronavirus does not exist, and there's no plan to have vaccination, because vaccination is a foreign peril and it will probably harm people. And then, you know, well, thank goodness President Trump has gone. He's in the past, but his shadow is still lying very heavily on the land. And there's 60 million people who voted for him who still deny climate change, who still won't wear masks. And so it depends on which country you're in. But on the whole, I think we need to change not just governments, but business. And here the consumer has a major role, because once you understand, and that's where education comes in, once you understand that you have a choice when you go shopping, this product, how was it made? Where did it come from? Did it harm the environment? Was it cruel to animals? Is it cheap because of child slave labor or inequitable wages? And if the answer to those questions is yes, don't buy it. And that has already changed some businesses. And, you know, the young people too, it's not just that they're changing, because they now are learning more about the problems that we face in the future, but they're influencing their parents and their grandparents. And some of those parents and grandparents are in decision-making positions. They're CEOs of big companies. I mean, I know this for a fact. And it's made a difference in China, where one mother wrote to me and said, I used to be just a selfish shopper. I never thought, but my daughter is roots and shoots, and she's told me that I should think about the things I buy. So now I think about it. I'm an ethical shopper. And she's actually working now with Roots and Shoots and doing little plays for them to act. So, you know, change is coming, but there are so many bits and pieces. And as for governments, well, in my experience, I've known people go into politics and they're just so full of enthusiasm, they're going to change the world, you know, if it's climate change or deforestation or whatever it is. But if they come up with legislation which is going to hurt the pockets of the people who voted them in, suddenly they don't have that support anymore. So again, it's up to the people. And again, I come back again and again, until we eliminate poverty, there are so many people who cannot make those ethical choices, who cannot support legislation that will cost them even more.
And Jane, I'm going to stick with you on this, just because you mentioned there your role as an individual, and then politicians and, you know, private sectors. What's the best way, do you think, to motivate the public, private sectors and politicians to save the planet and to do their bit? Because that's the hardest thing, right?
Well, again, it depends on the people, the country who's elected them. You know, there's an unfortunate swing to the far right around the planet, which is very, very worrying, and it's in more and more countries. And when you get into this far right mode, you're supporting all this greed and this making money and power that I talked about earlier. But I have found that, at least with some businesses, the way, when I meet someone who's in that sort of position, I don't attack them. I don't point out that they're actually harming everything. I tell them stories. And because I feel that you've got to reach the heart somehow. People must change from within to really change. And if you start arguing with them, you can watch. I've watched this happen with people, and they're talking to each other. And it starts to become a bit aggressive. And then each one of them, rather than having an open mind and having an open discussion, they're thinking as the other's talking, how can I refute this? Because I know I'm going to prove I'm right. And so they stop listening to each other. And so that's something which, I talk to Roots and Shoots about a lot. You've got to reach into the heart. And for me, the best way is telling stories.
Yeah, I love that. And people connect with people, and finding ways to make that connection is such an important link. And ultimately, we're all in this together. So, spending time arguing about it is not really the way forward. Anna, you're obviously doing lots actively and online to help inspire and motivate other young people. But what would be your kind of ways of motivating the private sectors and politicians as well?
Well, I think they have a chance to make a much bigger difference. As individuals, of course, we can go vegan, we can stop flying, and etc. And those are really good things, but they don't mean much if the people in power, the businesses, the governments also hold up their end of the deal. 71% of global emissions come from just 100 companies, and so they have a much, much bigger responsibility. And this information is very readily available, and they can easily find this out, so they don't really have an excuse not to do anything. But we just need to keep that pressure on them to make sure that they hold up their end of the deal.
Yeah, and Anna, you're so dedicated as a climate activist, but you also look at local work as well, and kind of finding the stories that are important in your area, including for you, air pollution. I saw in one of your videos, which is really important. So do you think motivating on a local and global scale is also really important?
Yeah, I think we really need to include communities in this to ensure climate justice. So bringing everyone up with us, because if we leave the people who can't afford to buy the more expensive yet more eco-friendly clothing and can't afford to buy the very, very fresh fruit and vegetables, then it doesn't work. And so having the facts that relate on a local level are needed just as much as the international stuff.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So Tara, tell us the secret. You advise world leaders on these issues and climate justice. How do you motivate those in those kind of political roles and kind of that level?
Well, it's really closely associated with what Anna was just talking about. You have to figure out what their motivator is and what do they care about. So, Anna's picked a really good example in air pollution. So on an individual level, someone might act to change something because they care about the health of their family. But that can also be a motivator for somebody in a business. Businesses are motivated because they have a reputation they want to uphold. And they need what we call a social license to operate. So they have to have a permission from all of us to exist, or if we don't buy their stuff, they don't exist anymore. Goods, products, services. So they need us. They have to respond to what their clients and their customers want. And they're starting to hear that loud and clear, that we don't just want cheap throwaway things. We want them to be responsible. We want them to give us more choice. And we want it, as Anna said, to be affordable and accessible to everybody. But businesses are also at risk if they don't think about climate change, because their supply chains are at risk from climate. Their buildings, where they're located, they're all at risk from the impacts we already experience at just 1 degree of warming. So they need to prepare for that. And there's a whole lot of regulation and legislation coming down the line that is also going to force their hand. So it just doesn't make sense for a business not to be tuned in to sustainability. and climate change. And the same for governments. A government is there with a duty of care to its citizens, and it's not possible to take care of your citizens right now if you're not looking at taking care of our environment. Just helping us through COVID isn't enough. You have to have an eye to the longer term, or you won't be taking good care of your citizens that you're responsible for.
And these are the people I'm talking about in governments where, they don't care about the future. They're there for the power for here and now. And it's like the business that's interested in short-term gains, and they're not thinking about the effect on future generations. That's the big problem. So in the European Union and, civilized, quotes, countries, it's okay. But if you go to some of these African regimes, that what you just said doesn't work because they don't care.
No, you're right, Jane. And that's why we can't just work on climate change and not work on governance and human rights. Because if you don't have the right to participate in decision making, if you don't have the right to protest, if you don't have the right for your vote to be counted fairly, then it's very, very, very difficult to make those changes happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
How do you work with some of these governments? I don't know how you get to change them, because their citizens protest and they're put in prison, or they're killed, they're disappeared. So it's so different when we're living in a democracy.
Absolutely. And it's that kind of global approach to this that we really have to, I think, bear in mind. It's not just about it is about your kind of local impact and where you live and where you're from, but actually we do need to be thinking about the global impact of this, and that goes across all levels. Tara, and Jane's already touched on this, what people can do individually in their everyday lives, but Tara, your book and you did a talk last year which just is fantastic, because it really shows you so many ways that you can help the planet by tiny little things you can do in your everyday life. So what would be your top tips?
So yeah, I'll show you the book. That's the book, How to Save Your Planet, One Object at a Time. And so it's filled with everyday objects in your house. So my whole objective is to democratize this. It shows you that no matter who you are, you can do something, because in here is everything from tea bags to soap to sun cream to yoga mats, pens, computers, things that every single one of us has. But I would never pick one object or one thing out of here as my takeaway thing to do, because all of that depends on you, the person, and what you're doing. So it may be that the biggest problem you have is you buy too much stuff, buy less stuff. It may be that you eat too much meat, eat less meat. It may be that you travel and fly nonstop. That might be your thing. But the principle of all of this is very close to what Jane said. And I would sum it up as get informed and be curious. Yeah. So find out about things, especially if you're going to make a big purchase, like a new computer or a new mobile phone or something. Like, ask questions before you buy it. Figure out what that company has got on their website about saying what they're doing to be a sustainable, ethical, responsible company. And then use your influence. So people often think that it's like what Anna said, it's like being told that if you switch off your lights, you'll save the planet. You won't. I can guarantee you that you won't. But if you make changes in your life and you tell other people about them and you encourage them to make changes, that's when you're powerful. Now you're having leadership. So it's all about thinking about your change as the center of a ripple. And then everybody that you tell or show, you don't preach at them, but just tell them how you made this change and it feels better. It's good for you. You saved money, tasted nicer, whatever it was. And then your ripple grows and grows. And that is your superpower. It's the influence you have, because I might not change something I'm doing because the Prime Minister tells me to. But if you're my friend and I trust you and I like you, I will probably try that change because you said it was good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anna, what do you do in your everyday life to help with issues around that?
I think one of the most important things you can do is read or watch things about the climate crisis. To get yourself informed and to be educated on it, because then you don't need anything else. Well, those things might help, but if you read the science, you'll feel a certain emotion reading it. You'll either be feeling completely hopeless or upset or even angry at the inaction, and that should spur you on to make those other changes in your life. So if you're reading about it and you see the destruction of our planet, then you will be motivated from that fear and that anger to do something in your own life and to try and raise awareness to the people around you, your friends and your family, maybe even further, to then make other changes that will then have a ripple effect. But if you don't know that the climate crisis is as severe and urgent as a problem as it is, then you're not going to be able to take those steps because you won't have a motivation. So mine would be keeping myself up to date on the science and the interlinking justice that comes with that.
Never underestimate the power of education, as all of you have so beautifully explained. So Jane, I have to ask you a bit of a frank question, but I feel like you're going to be very honest with it. How do you feel about the future of the planet? I'm sure you're an optimist, but where are you with how our planet looks now and into the future?
Well, to be honest, now it looks very grim. And we're always hearing, think globally, act locally. But to me, that's absolutely the wrong way around. And that's what I tell our Roots and Shoots groups. If you think globally, it is really, I defy anybody to think about all these global problems that I outlined half of them and not feel a bit depressed. We have a window of time and it's closing. So the urgent thing is, I do have hope for the future. We can make the changes. We have the technological know-how. We have people who are making these changes in their daily lives. I haven't mentioned, but it's really important that one of the things we really have to do is to protect and restore our forests, because they're one of the great lungs of the world, as well as reducing the pollution in the ocean, which is the other great lung of the world. But, we don't have that bigger window of time to do these things, and it's closing. And so action now. I am optimistic about the future, but only if we get enough people together right now to take action, to make changes in their daily lives, to lobby their governments in the right sort of way, to put pressure on business, to help alleviate poverty. A lot of people have mentioned poverty. I come back to it again and again and again. Mahatma Gandhi said, this planet can produce enough for human need, but not human greed. And I think that's a wonderful, wonderful statement that he made. So yes, I'm optimistic. I think the young people really are, they're getting the education in schools. We never had it. We didn't really need it back then. But, an educated mass, a critical mass of young people who understand, we need money to live, but we shouldn't be living for money, who understand what we should do to make a difference. But we've got to work really hard to make that happen now. There's too much time spent talking and not acting.
I hope that this year will be another positive step in the right direction for that action. Tara, what gives you cause for hope?
People. I kind of think that people have caused this problem, so it's up to us to fix it. I think we just have to be a bit more humble, as Jane says. I think we have to realize that nature is our ally in all of this. But nature can only help us if we help ourselves. If we start to realize what quality of life really is. And as Jane says, it's not about stuff and possessions. It is about our health, our well-being, our family, our safety, our rights, all of these things, which in many ways you can enjoy without damaging the planet. And then it's a lot of being brave, by us, by anybody who's in a leadership position. They know what to do right now. No more fossil fuels. We have to stop using them. And it's not like we don't know how to do that. Some sectors are a little trickier than others, but in most cases, we know what to do. We know how to make renewable energy. We just need to do more of it. We know that there are better ways to design cities and build houses. We know how to retrofit houses. We just need to do more of it. And to keep the global focus that Jane has brought to us as well. We have to remember that we are a global community in this, and that the warming we've already caused and warming we've locked into the atmosphere is going to make a lot of people that are already very poor and vulnerable even more poor and more vulnerable and more at risk. And so we're going to have to help those communities to adapt to climate change, perhaps to move and find new places to live. That's our responsibility. It applies too in our own societies. Again, it's the poorest people that fall through the cracks and will be most impacted by climate change or by climate policy. So we have to look out for them all. And that's why the justice part of all of this is so important too. But yeah, ultimately, it would be silly not to be hopeful because we know what to do. We just need a big kick and all get on with it, and realize that I think for too long, this is where we got it wrong, us as an environment community, is for too long it was always seen as something that would hurt, that would be a burden, that would be bad, harmful to business, to governments, to people. It's all good. There is nothing but benefits in making these changes. It will make a better society. And that's exciting. That's not even hopeful. It's exciting.
I love that being the slogan of actually dealing with the climate crisis. Get on with it.
Just do it. We can borrow from, shoe companies and whatever we need to do.
Other shoe companies are also available.
Yeah, all shoe companies are available.
Yeah. And Anna, I mean, this is potentially one of the most important questions of this conversation. How do you feel about the future of the planet and about your future?
Well, I don't feel a lot of hope. I'm mainly motivated by fear, but I think that my generation should be able to change things. But our issue is that by the time we're old enough to be in positions of power to change things, it will be too late. So we need to be raising awareness and putting pressure on the people already in power and already can change things to do it for us and to do it now. So we just need to make sure that we keep that pressure up. There are incredible activists who are in my generation all over the world, from the Philippines to Brazil to China to here, working really, really hard every day. But we need the adults to also hold up their responsibility and to keep working and to have that climate action right now. And yesterday, we need it yesterday, and to just keep at it and keep working and keep consistent. But at the same time, I think something our generation needs to be really careful of is our mental health, so that we can stay consistent and we don't burn out, and that we can keep up this awareness and to advocate for climate action.
Well, I have to say, Anna, with people like you and everyone on this panel, I am hopeful. There is my optimistic side, continues. I've got fire in my belly and a lot of optimism, hopefully, with people like you. So thank you ever so much. And thank you to all of you for this inspiring conversation today on how to save your planet, the planet. And if you're watching at home, I hope you've enjoyed this fantastic talk. There's lots to think about there on what you can do as an individual. And in an exciting year as COP26 will take place later in November, we'll be going in with a lot of gusto, I'm sure, as you've seen from this fantastic talk tonight. So thank you all for tuning in, and for everyone for watching. Of course, the Northern Ireland Science Festival and British Council, who helped make this happen. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.